Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Playbook. This week's guest is Katie Bresciani. Katie, how you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
Awesome. Well, we're thrilled to have you this week. So, how was the Christmas break? How were the holidays?
Quick. They went by quick.
Yes, yeah, a little too quick. So, yeah. It's nice to get back in a routine and a groove. So, we appreciate you taking the time to kind of come on the podcast, and you're going to be the first person that we've interviewed from the insurance field. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of knowledge for our audience and a lot of useful information. So the first question we usually like to start off with, I guess, Katie, is, so when it comes to insurance, why did you kind of decide to become an insurance agent?
I saw the opportunity to kind of get rewarded for the hard work that you put into it. There's also the nice reward that you're helping people secure their dreams of owning homes and properties and making sure that in the event of a catastrophic event that they are securely insured.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds a lot like, real estate. When realtors kind of get into real estate, it's about, customer service, that red carpet treatment, going above and beyond, really focused on being a part of the journey, home ownership. And where theirs is probably more of like procuring the house and kind of that search and find. Yours is going to be more of a protecting, I would say, and kind of making sure that, God forbid, anything were to happen, they were properly insured and would have the adequate coverage that they need. So for our audience out there, especially some of the newer agents or some of the seasoned agents who haven't done that many transactions or not that much of insurance, why don't you tell me, some of the benefits for an licensed real estate agent to be kind of partnered with an insurance agent, and what kind of value you as an insurance agent can kind of bring to a realtor and helping them with their practice?
Sure. So I know that a lot goes into what the clients are wanting to spend, obviously, overall on a monthly payment schedule. And that does include your homeowner's insurance. So partnering with us, they can kind of get a step ahead and know what we could insure a home for. We can let them know the type of reports that we will need in order to bind that policy for them, whether it be a 4-point and a win-mitt, and what sort of credits those would bring in towards the premium as well to try to bring those down.
Yeah, those are great points. So kind of what I'm hearing there, just to kind of sum up, it's one, that you're providing a service where they don't have to wait to go under contract. If they're wanting a quote, they're potentially thinking about making an offer. Hey, let's go ahead and get the insurance quote. Somebody can give you a call, get the insurance quote. You kind of get a roundabout of what that is. In addition to providing a quote, so that way they can calculate their monthly payment, you're also going to allow them to know, hey, what reports might be required and which other reports might be beneficial to you to provide a discount on that insurance policy and bring that premium down.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So as far as like the wind mitigation reports, I know you talked a little bit about the 4-point inspections. When somebody is writing an insurance policy on a house, for any first-time home buyers out there, what are some of the things to kind of consider when it comes to homeowners insurance? Anything that they need to be prepared for?
Yeah, so as far as the 4-point, that's going to be an inspector going in and looking at the roof, the HVAC, the electricity, and the plumbing. So it's really going to point out any flaws that the home currently has. They can then use their agent, obviously, to negotiate with the sellers to either have those repairs done or maybe bring some money off of the deal. And the wind mitigation is going to go in and see how the roof is actually going to withstand a hurricane or any heavy winds. We also like to encourage people in flood zones to please get a elevation certificate that's going to show us how the home was built in that flood zone, whether it was built out elevated, so it's actually not in the flood zone, and could be some credits as well towards the premium.
Yeah, definitely. So I've heard that before. The elevation certificate is going to allow you to quote a more accurate premium, which is usually in most cases going to bring it down from just a generalized quote if you're kind of putting in that parcel of land. In addition to that, with the reports, I know you're bringing up some key factors there with the 4-point, the plumbing, the roof, the electrical. When it comes to that and a repair is needed and they can negotiate, what happens? Do all carriers require for those repairs to be done prior to closing, or is there sometimes maybe an exception where if both parties agree, the buyer has some kind of grace period where they can complete some of those repair? That way they don't lose their coverage and it's canceled on them, and they can be performed in a timely manner.
Yeah, so we do have to provide those reports prior to binding, before the actual binder takes effect. However, if there are some repairs that need to be made, there is sometimes some leniency that we can pull, um, especially if it's a roof and we can show that the permit's been pulled, it will be repaired, or there's a contract showing that the the contractors coming in to repair those necessary items. We are able to work with each homeowner depending on their needs and really try to get a solution for everybody. And whether it's done prior to the closing or after, we can make it happen.
Okay, so it sounds like there's some flexibility there. I know some people, especially if you're on a budget, you're trying to purchase a house, you have inspection that needs to be paid for, usually out of pocket, appraisal a lot of times that needs to be paid for out of pocket, and then obviously a required down payment and closing costs. Sometimes funds become a little tight, and it might be like, hey, due to a lender restriction, we got to keep a certain amount of money in reserves, whatever it might be. But it does sound like, hey, as long as maybe a paid contract for the work being done to kind of clear a 4 point, or if there was some kind of grace period there, depending on the type of scope of work that was needed, there is some flexibility in there, so buyers didn't have to do prior to closing. Because I would think the issue that would come up is, it's hard for a buyer to perform repairs on a seller's home that they currently don't own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can see where that can kind of somewhat be a little bit problematic if the seller was unwilling to do the repairs. And I'm glad to hear that there's some flexibility and leeway, so that way that buyer can pursue the dream of the home ownership and purchasing that home. So let's go take a trip down memory lane. So prior to insurance, like what exactly were you doing? One thing, and before I ask you, kind of segue into this question, I always kind of like to see, when we talk to high producer, high achievers, find out kind of a little bit about their past, see some of where that skill set was learned and how they were able to get in such a high level of production, such as you have with insurance. So what was your background prior to getting into insurance?
Yeah, so I actually moved to Florida as a professional figure skater. I did that for about 15 years, traveling the world, performing in shows, and I would coach when I was in between contracts, and it's just always been a passion of mine. So I grew up as an athlete. The pandemic kind of ended my career, my live entertainment career, so kind of used that time to shift and refocus and try to find a new career path, because obviously an athlete's life expectancy or career expectancy is a little shorter. So I sidestepped into, had always had some interest in real estate, sidestepped into that, and was working in the back office at 54 Realty, and then kind of just fell into this opportunity and really have enjoyed learning insurance, a whole different aspect of real estate that I never really considered. But the challenge is definitely there. I love the challenge. I love, the grit and the hectic chaos of every day, and it's never the same.
Yeah, where it doesn't become boring or mundane. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And some of the things that I would think, kind of taking back, is obviously, figure skating with any sport, a lot of hard work and dedication. So I'm assuming those are probably a couple attributes you picked up when you were, figure skating, and then the coaching, just being there to explain things to people and help them have an understanding. That probably helped your progression into sales and helped the understanding of, becoming an insurance agent, where you're able to kind of provide that advice and then know how to kind of talk to them. Because a lot of people, uncertainty puts a lot of people on edge.
Oh, for sure.
And then having, working in the real estate brokerage for, 2 or 3 years and being versed in that, you kind of understand, you had some basic fundamentals, understanding probably some terminology that allowed you to gain a little bit more traction in insurance than most people starting out.
Absolutely. And you were so right in saying that a lot of it is just making the clients feel comfortable and understand what they're purchasing.
Yeah.
And letting them know that we've got them covered. Should something happen, their home will be rebuilt or will be put back to the way it was.
And I'm assuming a lot of those conversations don't happen over text.
No. Lots of phone calls.
Yes. And a lot of people, and I think that's, nowadays everybody trying to go to AI or tech, that's one fundamental that a lot of people are trying to get away from. But especially when it comes to come to insurance and, mortgage or real estate, I think those are still kind of talking face-to-face interactions or over the phone, where you can explain, because there's so many moving components, moving parts, and a lot of times uncertainty will lead to not performing or not moving forward or progressing with the transaction. But just if they can have a thorough explanation and understand and be given the data, then they can kind of make over their decisions, and usually no problem moving along with the purchase of the home. So, we talked a little bit about the skill sets from your previous occupations, kind of how that was able to catapult you into a high level of success. When you started your insurance career, you kind of made that segue over to insurance. You probably had like a mindset of what it's going to be like. What is probably one thing you did not expect when starting insurance?
The chaos.
The chaos? Some more chaos than real estate?
I think it's different chaos because my role in real estate never really dealt with people's money. It never dealt with their security. I was working back office, kind of cleaning up transactions and doing a lot of the go-betweens for title companies and agents and clients. And so I never really saw, it's heartbreaking when hurricanes come through and people are stranded without power, or their roof is ripped off, or their yard's a mess, and you see people at their most vulnerable states.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to be there and help them and guide them through it is one of the coolest rewards, and hearing that they're okay, and and making sure they're just happy that they survived. And but the chaos of rates rising and dealing with people upset with their premiums increasing, and their mortgage company forgot to pay their premium, whatever it may be, like, it's always a different issue that we are always trying to stay on top of for our clients and make sure that they don't have to worry about anything, or that their coverage is always there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think I'm going to sum this up by a term that I've never heard people use before, but it sounds like to me, when you're kind of telling me about it and kind of what you didn't expect and all the things that you need to kind of be there for the person, is it's not necessarily the chaos of writing the business and the chaos of fielding the quotes or the calls or whatever that might be, unless they were calls of concern or just being there for people. But it's almost a chaos of caring, and just kind of humanizing the experience more than it just being like another premium in the book or another quote you kind of email out, but just really going above and beyond. If God forbid something happens, they need to be put in a claim, just being kind of like right there with them, going through the process, rather than just kind of give them the number to call and telling them to figure it out.
Yeah. That's it. It's feeling those emotions with our clients. Yeah,
absolutely. And kind of being there with them. So, obviously the chaos of, like I said, the chaos of caring, not knowing probably all those emotional roles that you would play and all the life events and how it could impact the clientele was something that kind of, was eye-opening to you, and something you kind of didn't expect out the gate. What would you say is something that, if you were somebody who's starting sales, or, a lot of sales is just going to be customer service. I always say, you just want to go above and beyond customer service. Sales is I define it as you're providing a solution to somebody's problem. It's typically what it is. You're the stopgap, and that's what you're compensated for. What would you say if you were to give like one nugget of information or one helpful hint to somebody who's starting off in sales, whether it be insurance or another sector? What would you say is the one thing to kind of focus on and kind of start to build that foundation of customer service and building a clientele?
Sure. So the one thing that I always tell the workers in our office is take the time, listen to the person. Don't just try to push them off or pass them off. Sometimes they just want to vent. Sometimes they just want somebody to hear what they have to say.
More often than not.
Yeah. Nobody fully will understand what they're going through because everybody's situation is different. But if you can just lend that ear and try to find a solution for them or with them, just make the time and respond to those emails. Pick up the phone. Stay late if you have to. Come in early. Like, just be there, be present, and
just put in the work.
Yeah. And do it with a smile.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes easier said than done. Absolutely. I know the days that are more hectic than not, but it's just, it sounds like a what I'm hearing is get out of the way of yourself,
Yeah.
and what I mean by that is, yeah, we all have needs and we all sometimes want to prioritize, getting out on time or punching the clock. And, we like to enjoy, everybody has something they like to enjoy. Not everybody wants to work all the time, obviously. But hey, if you have to go above and beyond and you don't have to jet out at exactly, when that clock hits 4:59,
Yeah.
then kind of just go above and beyond, be there for somebody, making sure their needs get met, that it doesn't linger on to the next day. Because
Right.
I can't say in real estate, mortgage, any of that, it's going to be vital because these are very touchy subjects and it creates a lot of worry. Sometimes when people start to get worried, a restless night's sleep, you're not feeling that call at night if you were available to get into a disaster the next morning because who knows what kind of thoughts went through their head and what it snowballed into.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
being there, I could definitely see that. As far as like people who, are agents who are trying to, let's say, gain traction in real estate, maybe having tough time with deals and due to condition of homes, maybe they're getting these reports back, and a lot of times, the reports aren't favorable. From your aspect, if somebody was to eyeball it, whether it's like age of home, type of home, maybe like, if you're looking at these types of home, they might be tougher to insure, whether it's a manufactured, modular, maybe it's an age of home, maybe it's a roof, not a roof, but what was I going to say? If it's wood frame
Mm-hmm.
compared to block, what are some things that necessarily aren't red flag, but something where, hey, you might want to ask the listing agent, do a little bit deeper dive because a lot of times these homes are going to be tougher to insure.
Sure. Electrical.
Okay.
We're seeing a lot of condos come back with aluminum wiring, and the whole buildings are built that way, and a lot of insurance companies do not.
Is there a certain age that you're seeing that on? Like
70s.
70s? Okay.
Yeah. So, obviously they've found insurance. Where they found insurance,
Mm-hmm.
ask.
Yeah.
Find out what carrier the previous owners were going through, and let us work that angle for you. I would say that's been our most recent biggest hurdle, besides the huge roof
Yeah.
issue. But lately, it's just been condos with old wiring systems.
Mm-hmm. So, and what about like age of homes? Are you seeing like if it's a certain age, it seems like it's tough to insure? Like I know obviously a certain age is going to trigger. Do you need to have a 4-point inspection, a roof cert, wind mitigation? There's a certain age where it's like the home almost becomes insurable because it's been built for too long, or is there something where wood frame, maybe not many carriers want a wood frame compared to a block, or is it usually?
We're not seeing much of that as long as the home is well maintained,
Okay.
and the homeowners are keeping up on the repairs and keeping up to code, and we're not seeing anything. There are some carriers that they're not insuring homes older than 10 years just because they don't have the book for it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we're able to find insurance pretty much. I haven't seen age of home as an issue. To be honest, where that gets kind of hairy is the 2002, 2003, 2001, where it's not an old home, but it's starting to be that time where repairs need to start being made. The roofs need to be replaced, and
Mm-hmm.
it's who's going to do that? Do you get out of the house
Mm-hmm.
and let the next owners do it,
Mm-hmm.
or do you suck it up and
yeah, and I
those
think
repairs yourself?
too is, and then I think just the agents being aware of that, right? So if they're kind of on the listing side and that roof has been replaced, you might want to advise your seller in listing consultation, hey, we could try to list as is. This might become an issue.
Mm-hmm.
The home might be uninsurable
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of carriers being 20 years or older, or it could be a negotiation tactic. On the flip side, buyers agents need to kind of, that way they're not putting their buyers under contract without giving them a little advice. So that way their buyers aren't out the inspection money once it comes back, it's uninsurable. Is to kind of just be consciously aware of that and, have that insight and that knowledge. So that way they can educate their buyers. And then the buyer can ultimately make the decision if it's something they still want to proceed with.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Katie, we appreciate having you so much. You've been a wealth of knowledge. So, Katie, if any buyer, seller, any agent looking to connect is looking for a quote or, build rapport with you, maybe ask you some questions. I know you're running the Great Florida Gulf Coast Agency right down the street in Land O'Lakes. What's the best contact phone number and email address for them to reach you on?
Sure. So we're in the office Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 technically. 6:30 is usually my out time, but you can give us a call there at 813-475-5411 or just shoot us an email over at gulfcoast@greatflorida.com.
All right, Katie. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you being a guest on this week's show, and we thank you for tuning in and look forward to speaking again to you next week.